my soccer universe, my name is Roland and this is Football Talk, and please for this episode allow me to be a fan for once. I have been so analytical in many of my recent episodes that I just need to get the fan mode a little bit out, and I thought now I need a little bit of a check-in episode with Europe while I'm also preparing for part 3 of my map series, which will probably be around 1st of May, but I have to see how my scheduling works out for that. But in this episode, I just want to be a fan. I want to talk about my two favorite clubs and how their seasons have been going in quite opposite directions. And it is so weird because I had these clubs. I was always a LASK fan. LASK was kind of always this shitty little team from my hometown that I just followed because it's your local team and this is what you should do. You follow your local team. And yes, you were always hoping for more. There was some big history behind them with being the first team not from Vienna to win a national title. But ever since, they have always been in their own way. But I also was a Milan fan from pretty much the same moment on, and go back to the early 90s. Milan were all conquering, the best team in Europe, the stuff of legends, and I always balanced out my misery with LASK with being a fan of Milan. And boy, did this not turn around. It actually turned around already in the 2010s at times, or the late 2010s. Then Corona resets the balance and now we're back again. And it is weird, but it also leads that I'm fully on board with LASK to the point that that's all I'm thinking about when I think about football at the moment. Because this can be an absolutely amazing season. It's already a pretty good season when you're in for a double still. And then there's Milan, where the early hope of the season, and yes, overperformance, blah, 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 it just fizzled away. And what's even worse, I really don't like how they're playing. Of course, I'm going to mention the other leagues as well, but more or less in passing. But let's start with the good, and then we go to the ugly. There is no bad here, in a way. And then I'll finish it out by just talking a little bit about what's happening else in Europe, so that we have a reset about a month before we are at the end of the season. Boy, the time is passing really, really, really fast. Okay, the last time I talked about the Austrian Bundesliga and especially LASK on this channel was right after the end of the regular season, which LASK finished in 3rd place, but well within touching distance, just a point behind Sturm Graz. Salzburg was just ahead of us, and it was really, really, really tight, everything. We got even tighter through halving the points. And at that time, the Cup semi-final in Ried, local rival, the one rival that hates us most, so this was always going to be a tough semi-final, had to be postponed. It was just ahead of us, meaning that our first game against Hartberg at home was kind of a little bit of a slog. Where we had plenty of chances, couldn't convert, and it ended in 0-0 draw, but you also didn't want to go all out because you knew there's the Cup semi-final looming. And that Cup semi-final was one of the ugliest matches I've seen LASK play. That I don't know how we won that one, but when we did it, we couldn't hold the ball for a couple of seconds. Ried were outplaying us for most of the time with their absolutely nasty and super aggressive style. And a style, it's very much like Arsenal, only throw-ins, dead ball situations, corners. It's ugly to play there. Add to it the pure vitriol that is coming from the stands. And it's an atmosphere, and this one went. The first derby that was a month earlier was already very emotional, but it was just about in check. But this time, it went too far on many occasions. Be it as it may, Reed scored within a minute, and then the Ryan had equalized. Yes, LASK actually, I think, had two chances where they hit even once the post. I mean, two really big chances in the first half, despite being completely outplayed. They had the better chances, but this was all Reed, this match. And it goes into overtime, thanks to a goal being disallowed narrowly, and I'm still not sure whether I shouldn't have counted, because Reed scored in the 87th minute. Reed had also in the first half a goal disallowed, but I have to say this one was a little bit different set. Yeah, but it was a clear. To me, it was clear it shouldn't be disallowed. It shouldn't be allowed. Better say that. But we make it into overtime. And again, Reed have the big chance. And then in the second half of overtime, after, a lot of emotions, some players being close to being thrown out and everything, Cross comes in and Cacciavenda heads it in. Yes, very much held by Reed's defender Havena, who is such a threat up front. And you lead a game that you had no business leading. You also had the luck towards the end that it actually Reed put a shot over the bar, but you're in the final. You meet Altach. And yes, it's not going to be an easy match because Altach is so defensively sound and can hurt you up front. But this is a game that you're favorite in. I mean, it has not been closer to win a title. And to me, I'm going to that cup final with my family. This is on 1st of May. I have to tell you, for me, it's all about that. And due to that heavy semi-final, it was also clear that the game in Vienna against Rapid, even though we led already in the first minute, will be a tough one because we are spent. We went overtime and so on, and yes, we lost that one 4-2, and I don't want to talk about it. But what happened then afterwards is something that just exploded onto the fan base, because there were some insecurities. We had not been in great form ahead of this international break. There were some deficiencies, especially when it comes to corner kicks and free kicks and so on, where we seem to have been found out by the opponents. Well, that all changed within 15 minutes of our first match back, and unfortunately I was sick as a dog for that one. But I was watching on the couch and on the stadium. 15 minutes. We were 3-0 up against Austria Vienna with a man more, and it was just a true storm from us. And what's even better is that suddenly our corner kicks suddenly worked. There were some routines in there that no one could defend. It was just a revelation. We won that one 4-1. Yes, Austria then made it 3-1, and it was a crazy opening 15 minutes. But we won that one 4-1, and if we would have played full on, it could have been more. Austria was there for the taking. But you could see the power that LASK have up front with Adeniran, with Uzor, and of course with Sasha Kalajdzic on loan from Wolves. So really, really encouraging signs. But it was then quickly said this was only Austria Vienna. Well, the next game was even better because we outplayed Salzburg. However, we conceded twice. One was a really nicely played. The other one was a little bit unlucky equalizer. And this equalizer came in the 91st minute. However, after that, even though the one thing I have been complaining about LASK is that when we have half a lead, we sometimes don't go to extend that lead. And Salzburg were there for all the taking to make it. And there were some really nicely played goals from us as well. Again, dead ball situation, a nice counter-attack. But what was so astonishing is that they then went after it. They went for the win. And they got it with the last shot of the game from Boyamba. And suddenly you were in second place, 2 points behind Sturm Graz. A Sturm Graz team that has been anything but convincing, but hard to beat. And we had then the double now on the past weekend and in the midweek against Sturm Graz. And it was clear, if we beat them once and don't lose overall, we will be in first place. And the home game against Sturm Graz, honestly, This was probably the best performance I've seen of LASK in a super long time. We dominated them. Up and down. Dominated them. However, Sturm Graz are not only a clever team, they also are getting a little bit the rub of the green. Or a lot the rub of the green. And so they got a penalty early on that VAR kind of suggested, this was simulation. The referee stuck with his decision. And it has then been said, this should have been taken back. However, it's 1-0 Sturm Graz. But then LASK again. Twice hit the post, Jorgensen. Created so many chances. Adeniran himself could have had a hat-trick there. I think you had 28 shots, you had an XG of well over 3. But he only managed 1 goal. That was honestly also a little bit controversial. But no one talked about it because everyone was talking about the penalty and how well we played. But we didn't get the win. This felt like points dropped at that place. And points dropped because also Salzburg, who were more or less out of it, won at Austria Vienna, so they were kind of in with it. But the consensus was, yes, we were unlucky on that evening, and yes, the referee, although I am always a little bit loath to say that one, yes, this was not a penalty. But if you have 28 shots and only 5 go on target, and you only make 1 goal, it's also you. So this is where you always have to look first. But the consensus was, and then we go to Graz and beat them there. And that was even a meta game. Unbelievably. It took a lot out of me. But the weird thing is that I could see on that first game against Sturm Graz that there's no discussion. We play the best football in Austria at the moment. However, if it will be enough to get a championship, and I have been loath to associate that word with LASK, was very much in question, and it was even more in question after the game in Graz. Because, let me just tell you one thing. LASK is Spursy. LASK can be their worst enemy. When everything seems to be going well, there's always something that flips the script. This is something that has been with this club through my lifetime as a fan. And it's frustrating. And that's exactly what we saw on that Wednesday evening. LASK again started to dominate. Created the first 3 chances in that match. Yes, it was maybe not as dominant as it was in Linz, because Sturm gave some counter. But overall, you could see they are playing with confidence and they're having fun playing. But you concede an early yellow card for Alemão. And then Alemão in the 18th minute makes a tackle on the side on Malone, who was running not necessarily even through a goal. There were defenders in the middle, but he makes a tactical foul. There's no other chance but to give him a second yellow card. And you go off. You're a man less. And do you know what's the weirdest thing? You couldn't see that we were manless. Coach Kübauer did not change a thing. He just said, okay, central defender gone. We just play on the back. And we kept playing our game. Yes, maybe not as dominant as we probably have done before, but we still created best chances. And yes, Kitashvili hit the post. There we were lucky. But we still were better overall, but it seemed level. And right after the half, we have a big chance to take the lead through Usor. Then Sturm actually applied for once some pressure, but we got out of this pressure with Horvath running along the lines, taking the best player of the league, leaving him in the dust, playing a ball over to Usor, who yanks it into the net from outside the box. It's 1-0 with a man less, and it was deserved at that point. But seemingly this team likes to hand out challenges. Because Samuel Adeniran then gets I have to say, maybe the first yellow card. Defensible, but I felt it was a little bit harsh. But then his emotionality gets the better of him. What I hate And I think it's not only in Austria, although it was said also Austria, but if you have tall players that are very physical, it's very easy to call fouls against them. Because the defenders just bounce off of them, especially if they're strikers. And we have two such strikers up front. And he got fouled. It was not given. And he got so incensed by that you could see he's about to get now a second yellow card because he went already in one tackle way too harsh. Referee let go, and then he just mowed down Kitashvili. And so in the 68th minute, you're down 2 men because you get in your own way. But tell you the truth, Sturm, yes, they're now 2 men more. Of course, they're gonna dominate everything. But they had no idea what to do because we were defending deep and they had not the creativity. But here's the third thing. Again, Koulibaly, who was already responsible for the penalty, it was not a penalty, but he dangled the leg out to allow Fosso to hook in and fall. He again, it's towards the outside of the box, he just touches. It's a penalty. And again, Sturm Graz get a point. The crazy thing is, we were lucky then to not lose this one. I have to say that there were 2 chances by Sturm in there that just missed the goal by centimeters. And we were hanging on and we barely could defend ourselves. And they worked really, really hard. But we hang on to that. We really hang on and we got the point. It's an amazing result that if in 9 men you still manage to get a point out of this game. But the truth is also, if that penalty doesn't happen, I think we win this game. That's how good LASK is at the moment, but it will not be enough for a title because we're not clever enough. There is a certain gamesmanship that Sturm Graz has down that LASK do not have. There's a certain emotionality. That is great. You play like that. You are, and many experts say, LASK is the most and the only one consistent team at the moment to watch. But it comes down to cleverness. And this is the one thing that annoys me a little bit. Because, yes, you're still in a title race. Salzburg won again. So we're now 1 point behind Salzburg and 2 points behind Sturm Graz. But it's very open. But the thing is that the next 3 games, there's one game that's 6,000. That's the cup final. And now you have 2 players missing for the difficult game in Hartberg. Hartberg, who is only defense and then hitting you on the counter-attack, so you need to be careful there. They just won against Rapid Wien without having much to do. You played a really tough game against Sturm, and you also don't want to waste your chance to not play in that final. That final looms over everything, and then even worse, 3 days after the final, you play against Rapid. Hartberg and Rapid, under normal circumstances, I think we would go there for 6 points. But since there's a cup final, which is so much more important, to me at least, I want them to win this cup. If they win this cup, I think then you can really think that we are rolling on. That this might carry us. But it's not guaranteed, of course. But you see already, I'm talking here for well over 50 minutes about LASK. I mean, it is emotionally draining, but it's also so hopeful. And in a way, while I say it's emotionally draining, I'm also feeling kind of calm because I see how good we are. And sometimes things tend to even out. And yes, I realize when I talked about that cup semi-final, we did not deserve to win this one. We won it. And then the same thing now happened with Sturm Graz in the first match. So, it came a little bit back there. Things evened themselves out. That second game in Graz could have been the decider of why LASK might not become champions. On the other side, the hope is still there. And I'm not going to stop hoping. I just throw out there, in 65, we were never first in the table. Never. But we made a huge comeback during the season. We made a huge comeback during this season as well now. The last match day there was in Vienna, and Rapid then ended up losing. LASK were champions. The last match of this year is also in Vienna, with Sturm Graz playing against Rapid on the same match day. If we have Salzburg behind us, maybe. Just maybe history repeats itself, but I don't dare hoping. For me, the most important thing is get that frigging cup. That's the most important. But it is so exhilarating. It has everything in my thoughts at the moment is consuming me here. I'm in it. I'm living it. And I try to give you not only telling you, but also giving a little bit the emotion. It was fun so far. It's a fun season. It will cost me some nerves, but it's a real fun season that LASK is having at the moment. And that is in stark contrast to what Milan have been doing. Well, the only thing positive to say about Milan is that I feel now fairly confident that the goal for the season will be achieved, which is qualifying for the Champions League. But that season promised so much more. This was a season where you didn't have any European commitments, where you actually exited yourself relatively quickly from the cup, or the Coppa I should say, with a very stale performance against Lazio. However, more to come on that front. But it was all there. This is a season you beat Inter twice. And as I'm recording this episode, Inter is a win away from securing the title. You're 12 points behind Inter. And what's even more annoying is that both Inter and Milan have as many losses. Both are 5 losses, but Milan have 9 draws as compared to Inter's 3, and this is the difference. And this is what frustrates me so much. Yes, early on you won all the big games with Allegri's Cortomuso, blah blah blah. And yes, it is fun if you just can shut it down on defense and hit on offense, but it has to be sustainable. And it also has to work against smaller teams. But what annoys me with Milan so much is that against the smaller teams they dropped all these points. And then also the losses started coming against the big teams. An evening at Lazio, where Lazio fans suddenly showed up, and I could talk a whole lot about all things happening in Serie A, with all the battles going on in Rome, both clubs. I want to keep this at Milan now. But what's so annoying is that the losses then came against the big clubs too, Lazio and Napoli. And at that point, 2 weeks ago, just after the international break, you actually got into the international break with a little bit of a hope that Inter are a little bit off. But then they beat Roma and you lose to Napoli. And with an absolute nothing performance. And absolutely no striker talent up front. Allegri cannot get Pulisic and Leao to work together, puts them in wrong positions left and right, the midfield sometimes overrun. Then you have this awful loss against Udinese with the, 3-4-3 experiment that did not work. You spend tons of money on strikers like Nkunku and Füllkrug, who has 1 goal. And yes, when they started with Füllkrug, it seemed to work a little bit, but then he completely fell off. And I actually think that Santi Jimenez would not be such a bad striker, but no one gives him the confidence and says, hey, we trust you. He had such an unlucky start to the season, got injured then, and since then everything is spiraling down. Get him a mental coach. I think you have the striker there. You just have to use it, but you have to give him some support as well. It's just this ineptitude up front that so frustrates me. It frustrates me even more because Inter do have that. They are dangerous up front. Inter have a deeper squad and are buying smartly. Yes, the squad is not perfect. And this is what's the truly annoying thing in this case is that Inter actually were beatable. We beat them twice this season, and they're 12 points ahead. Something does not compute here. And also what doesn't compute to me, I'm a Milan fan first and foremost because when I became a Milan fan, they were a side that everyone in Europe was admiring. They played wonderfully. And yes, the times of Saki ball and even early Capello ball are over. I understand that. I can appreciate a good defensive performance. I mean, I grew up on Maldini and Baresi, and Maldini and Nesta in the center, and Tassotti, Costa Curtas, everyone in there. But I always enjoyed Milan the most when they had punch going up front. Even during the Ancelotti era, where there were so many frustrating defeats in there, you always had the feeling, if they turn it on, this is a squad that is fighting for each other and that has creativity up front. And you thought right after Corona that this creativity is coming back, that this Milan team is actually, with Pioli, building on something that is more in the style of Milan. It's not Allegri ball. That's not Milan, defensively sound and so on. That's not Milan. And I'm willing to accept it if it's successful. I'm not willing to accept it if you, with only one game per week, cannot keep up with Inter, who are playing on all fronts, who even are going into a Coppa Italia final and getting a double, which is something that Milan have never achieved in their history. This was frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating, and I've almost lost my interest in that season. Yes, I'm watching Milan, but it's not attentive watching. Not like I'm watching LASK. LASK, I cannot look away. I cannot afford looking at my phone because it's exciting to watch what's happening. With Milan, it is dreary. And yes, you got Allegri in, pragmatic. At first it did work. Modric played his heart out. Rabiot was a great signing. You shored up the midfield. I think you always have to start at the midfield. But the midfield has been failing now as well. And if you have lack of creativity and especially lack of direction in buying players, I mean, Nkunku was a panic buy. I'd rather would not have had any. And yes, at the beginning of January, thought he might turn it around. No, never did. And Füllkrug, I mean, why? Why? Yeah, there's something likable about him. But is that why you buy a striker? And January market is anyway not your strength. And I even think that Tare did an okay job as a sporting director, but now they're already talking about getting him out. Allegri is potentially going out, and I wouldn't be crying after Allegri. I tell you right now what I would like to see. I mean, it's so funny because you spend so much money in the transfer market for nothing. Every part of the team needs a new player. We need another good central defender. Pavlovic is great going forward, but defensively he's a liability. And then you have only Gabbia, who is okay. In the midfield, yes, Rabiot is great. Modric can play great, but Modric is over 40. He's not gonna play forever, so you need to work there too. And up front, I mean, now they're talking about selling Leao. Leao had an injury. He was never fit. Pulisic had an injury. He is also not that fit, and you can see that. And also, Leao is not a striker. He needs to come from the left. And you need a system that works with that, but Allegri is not willing to work with that. And to me, it's nigh unwatchable. It's nigh unwatchable what Milan are doing. I tell you what I want. I want Sarri. And I want Sarri to be given a mandate. Sarri is coaching Lazio. They have beaten Milan twice in Rome and twice deservedly so. He's losing players left and right. If this squad wouldn't have Sarri, they would be playing against relegation. And Sarri's football is attractive. This is way more than Milan style. Yes, Sarri as a personality is highly questionable. I mean, he started Mamagate in Italy. Enough said. But I want a coach that is given the time to develop something. And I want a leadership that is actual leadership. And the problem is, it's not Tara that's the problem. It's to a certain extent not even Allegri that's the problem. Although Allegri is a dinosaur, and he's, this is not what we should have in Italian football anymore. The problem is the leadership up front. The problem is that right after the championship, where you could build on momentum, you killed that momentum by selling the club to an idiot. And then a Furlani who has no idea what's happening. The club leadership is absolutely atrocious. And as much as I love Zlatan as a player, I mean, he has no role at the moment at Milan, just except of greeting Tom Brady when he's there. But I find Zlatan's role is very much diminished. He's not working for Milan. And even when he tried to work, he is not what Maldini was. Zlatan is very much all about Zlatan. Maldini is a true captain. I think before Maldini doesn't come back to the club, I'm afraid that this club is not going to find its way. And at the moment, it's all about this second star. That's the goal. But now you play in Champions League, you need a deeper squad, you need a squad that actually works. You will not play well in Champions League, I'm pretty certain about that. Yes, you need it for financial reasons, but I don't think it's happening. It's just annoying to the core how this Milan season has gone flat. Around Christmas, I thought, yeah, there might be a chance. But Inter kept on winning and we kept on dropping points. And it's this, it's not that there was like a big break off, but it was this slow descent into mediocrity that is still enough to finish second or third in Serie A. But at this point, I even see more hope for Juventus, who under Spalletti are actually building on something, had some great performances, didn't get all the points. Milan is playing Juventus this weekend, and I actually think that Juventus should be seen as the favorite. This is not your usual Juventus. Spalletti is doing something there. I don't see this at Milan. And yes, you have the big name coach. But that coach was a great coach 10 years ago. It's a little bit like Mourinho. On one side, I would be annoyed if they fire Allegri or Allegri leaves, because it again, you start anew again for second or third season in a row. Third season in a row. On the other side, I wouldn't be crying to lose Allegri. As much as he has done for Milan in his first stint, but it also went sour quickly. But he was not supported. But there, the squad actually played attractive football. You could actually watch that one. I don't know. Him going to Juve made him into a dinosaur. And so, yeah. Milan isn't the frustrating part. And it is so weird that it's my team that was the shitty team that is playing for 2 championships, and the team that should give me the glory, Milan, is playing for none and throwing them away. And I agree, it makes it worse that it's Inter who is winning the league again. That's what makes it worse. And I hate these predictions that, that they hear in all kinds of podcasts. Yeah, Milan seem to have the more solid structure than Inter, who are financially moribund or whatever. Nothing like that. I mean, Inter is keeping winning titles. It's the best team in Italy. And the only thing that I can take solace in is that they lost that final against PSG 5-0. And, that they should have won more titles, realistically. Yeah. I'm down now, so let's look quickly over the other leagues. You wanna know an interesting trend this season in Europe? Last season we had all these title winners that were a little bit unexpected. This season continues a trend, but more in the sense that there are big name teams that are threatened by relegation. We all know about Spurs. And Spurs might survive. They showed some good signs. But West Ham also had shown some good signs. So it's between these two clubs. If Spurs go down, that's probably one of the biggest stories in the Premier League this season. But it's not only Spurs. Nantes, a giant in the French game, is about to get relegated. And then in addition, Sevilla, 7-time Europa League winners, They're just about not in a relegation spot, but it doesn't look good for them. They are seriously threatened by relegation. It's a club in utter disarray. So that's definitely an interesting observation that we could see some really big teams getting relegated this season. Fiorentina probably will just escape, but Fiorentina was also in that discussion. And then in Austria, it's the cup winner, Wolfsburg, who is about to get relegated. Crazy stuff. And there's also Wolfsburg. There's also a Wolves trilogy. Wolves in the Premier League are already down. Wolfsburg in Germany are not looking good, and Wolfsberg in Austria also not looking good at all. So if you're associated with Wolves, it's not for the Wolves this season. So just wanted to have mentioned that when we look at the title races, we have 2 title races decided already. Bayern, best team in Europe at the moment, no doubt about it, have clinched the Bundesliga title and are all conquering. They just reached the Pokal final as well, where they play Stuttgart. Crazy game between Stuttgart and Freiburg yesterday, 2-1 after overtime. But Bayern is all conquering. I mean, they're toying with the Bundesliga, and I'm not sure what this says about the Bundesliga. I mean, Bayern have scored after 30 games 109 goals, have lost once. They're gonna win the double easily, probably even the treble, because they're favorites in the Champions League. I just realized that Champions League, maybe not the right thing here, but let's say Atletico Madrid asked Arsenal, which is not inconceivable. They will most likely play Bayern Munich. And if there's one team that they don't want to play outside of Real Madrid, it's Bayern Munich, because that's the other opponent that they lost the final to in horrific circumstances. So just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, Bayern are through. Dortmund, even though they are also a little bit like Milan, also already in the Champions League, and Leipzig now will seem to make it in. And so it's for the final Champions League spot, it's between Stuttgart, Hoffenheim, potentially Leverkusen. And Germany are also a bit in the running for the top 5 places. The other league that's already decided is the Netherlands, where PSV have clinched the title even before Bayern. Also not good. It was not a good Eredivisie season at all. Feyenoord, Nijmegen, Twente currently behind. Ajax is in there. Ajax actually might only make it into the Conference League. And that needs to be via playoffs, so not looking good. We have the cup final decided already. AZ won it emphatically against Nijmegen. So those were the 2 teams that lost the previous 2 cup finals. And now Nijmegen have lost 2 in a row, but they actually are a fun team to watch. That's the one team that you have to watch in analysis, Nijmegen, NEC, because they play forward, go front-footed, and don't care much about defense. And this is what got them beaten 5-1 in Z Cup final against AZ. As I said, there's quite some big names that might make, or biggish names, Ajax first and foremost, but also Utrecht is in there, that might only, one of them might make it into Europe. Twente seem at the moment on a Europa League place, but the Eredivisie did not have a good season. Absolutely not. I mentioned Atleti before. They lost a fun cup final. That was a really good cup final to watch against Real Sociedad. Being down or in the first minute, I think it was 16 seconds, and so on. Barrenechea opens up the scoring. But Atleti at one time seemed like inevitable that they will win this one, especially after they got the equalizer to make it 2-2 through Alvarez in the 83rd minute. They had plenty of chances to win it. Overtime then continued, at least for the first half, the fun aspect of that final. And then it fizzled out and went to penalties, where the 2 stars, Sorloth and Alvarez, saw their penalties saved, and Real Sociedad, with the reserve goalkeeper, who was the hero, win it to great celebrations. And I have to say, this was a hard final for me to decide on a team. On one side, Real Sociedad, an outsider, a club that is doing so many things so right. A club that also came to the final through 2 derbies. So that was actually quite fun to see. On the other side, seeing Griezmann again not win a title for Atletico Madrid, also does not feel quite right. As I said, they have still one chance, but I don't think it's a big chance. To win the Champions League, of course, this would be the biggest title of them all. In the league, Real Madrid have just also faded a little bit away. They just rely on the stars. There's so much going wrong at Real Madrid. And Barcelona enjoy now a 9-point lead with a Clásico coming up. But yeah, Lamine Yamal is now out for the rest of the season. Rafinha was injured, but Arda Güler is also there. But I think Barcelona will get the title home. 9 points in 6 games. Barcelona have too much quality to not win this title, even if they should lose the Clásico. Barcelona are probably disappointed that they are not in the Champions League anymore, but on the other side, a little bit like LASK, you undid it yourself for all the dominance. So even though at the moment I'm feeling a bit flat about Barcelona overall, there is some kinship there, I have to say for sure. But yeah, Spain is also in the running to get a 5th spot. I want to make a shout out to Getafe, who might actually make it into Europe, and it's even potentially in the Champions League, which would be crazy. Absolutely crazy. Let's continue the journey. Let's quickly look at France, where we may or may not have a title race. I mean, PSG, their eggs are in the Champions League basket. They have still the head-to-head with Lens to be played, which is probably on the second to last day of the season, which could make it interesting. Still think that PSG will just get it over the line. However, Lens have also the cup final, and they are the huge favorites there against Nice. A Nice team that I didn't realize are in 15th place. However, with some distance to the relegation spot in Auxerre, as I said, Nantes and Metz, more or less, I mean, Metz is already down and Nantes, very, very likely. What's also interesting in France is the race for the European spots with OM completely falling off, Monaco falling off. Strasbourg need to win the Conference League if they want to be in Europe next year. So it's Lille, OL, and Rennes. Rennes have been in really good form as of late. That could make it into the Champions League. Going over to Portugal, I'll finish with the Premier League. We have a cup final. That is a foregone conclusion. Sporting against Torrense from the second division. The semi-final between Sporting and Porto, that was the big one. And Sporting won 1-0 at home. And yesterday, two days ago, managed a 0-0 in Porto, who had also a man sent off. So Sporting move on. However, Porto is the clear favorite in the league. Have a 5-point cushion over Benfica. Sporting 1 point behind with a game in hand. Given how the Portuguese league is usually going, it's Porto. Porto will win. This is one great title for Faraoli, although he threw it away with Ajax. Very close to the finishing line last season as well, but I don't see him doing that because all the head-to-heads they have done well, and I don't think that they will lose to smaller opposition. Just want to say that Benfica is unbeaten and still have no shot. Mourinho has kept Benfica unbeaten. However, too many draws. Reminds you of one team that I've mentioned earlier a little bit with more detail. And then the Premier League is probably the most exciting at the moment when I look at the title races, because City have now leapfrogged Arsenal currently. Yes, Arsenal can take the lead back, but then with a game more again. And Arsenal just a month ago had a 9-point lead. Yes, with a game more. So it was never really a 9-point lead and a head-to-head and so on. But Arsenal have thrown this away. And, to me, this would be a major failure. And it is that Arsenal actually lost their roots. Because the way that they were winning, it was all about only set pieces and so on, and being nasty. But people have figured that one out meanwhile, and then Arsenal is missing any creativity, injuries to the rest. I have to say, with all their investment, it really seemed like this is Arsenal's year. But City, ever since January, and it's probably clouded by the fact that City did lose, for instance, to Bodo Glimt in the Champions League, that they were easily ousted by Real Madrid in the Champions League. But City quietly have gotten really, really good results. At the moment, the two teams are level. Even goal difference is just slightly in favor because of more goals scored for City. this can go down to the wire. However, everything points to City here, and Arsenal will have another miserable season unless they win the Champions League. But I am not sure they will go past Atletico Madrid, because Atletico Madrid is just saving their players at the moment for that. United, Villa and Liverpool will make it into the Champions League. The Premier League already has 5 confirmed, and then it's a match who will get into Europa League. It will also depend on what happens in the FA Cup. As City already have won the League Cup, so there will be another spot given out for the Conference League already. Chelsea is another big story. In a horrible form, have now let go of Rosinha. I don't want to mention too much. I just think that Chelsea an absolute mess. Is another former club that doesn't know where it's going, and we just slowly are coming to realize that all these great investments coming from across the pond, most of them are not getting it right. That's also truth. So yeah. The relegation battle is somewhat interesting, but I think it's between Spurs and West Ham. The rest seems to be safe. So yeah, this actually turned into quite a long episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. Sorry there's audio only, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out and tell you a little bit how I'm feeling. Hope you enjoyed that one. Let me know how you see things going. Give me a subscription, leave a comment below, and tell somebody else that Football Talk exists. I will go with something a little bit more analytic soon. I think it's a bit more, but I needed to do this just for fun's sake. In any case, I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye!